to look at the media, TV, print, social, you would not see this positive narrative reflected. That is a problem. One that perpetuates a stereotype and a negative image that is hard to overcome, and that unfortunately has allowed bad policies and unjust systems to persist. Combined, these impressions, policies, and systems have created barriers to success and in some cases to life itself. And those barriers and those short lifespans disproportionately affect communities of color. And at Metro United Way, we are determined to change that. We must be, if we are going to live true to our purpose of providing every person with the belief, with the means, and with the opportunity to reach their full potential. We must follow the data, and we must be willing to disproportionately invest to create equity where it is lacking. We work every day with our partners to move individuals and families from need to independence. And we know that to be successful, we must work together to address the interconnected challenges that are holding individuals in our community back. We know that childhood development, that youth success, that food security, stable and affordable housing, good paying jobs, financial products and empowerment workshops that move people towards financial independence, and safe places to live, work, and play are critical to the health of not only individuals, but to our communities as a whole. And we're excited about the Black male achievement work that we highlighted in our essay in the State of Black Louisville report. In that work, we are focused on improving the life outcomes of young men and boys of color in our community. And we are grateful to our partners, both locally and nationally, including the Association of Black Foundation Executives and BME Community, for helping guide us in this work and helping guide our community in this work. With these national and other community partners, and informed by the voices of local men and boys that are in our community today, we are committed to 4 areas. 1, developing a deeper focus on responsive grant making with an intentional equity lens to reduce the racial disparities that we see in our community. We are committed to leading with data disaggregated by race and by gender, to design policies and programs and grant-making strategies that make it easier to wrap around individuals and families. Those holistic wraparound services that we know are going to lift up and address all of those boxes that Ben, who just happens to have the same last name as me, talked about earlier. We need to pull them all off of the backs of our folks in our community. We are committed to messaging issues facing people and communities responsibly, focused on an asset frame. We know there are challenges, but let's talk about the good things that individuals of color and immigrants and others bring to our communities every single day. We are also committed to developing culturally responsive, innovative solutions that start with the voice of those that we are seeking to empower. As a community, we can and we must overcome the inequality present between people, races, and zip codes. And we invite every single one in our community to join us and our partners. Please check us out at metrounitedway.org. And as we are here today, also please take a moment to hold in your hearts my colleague and co-author on this essay, Daryl Unseld Jr., who is laying his father, Daryl Unseld Sr., to rest this evening and this weekend. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Matt Berry. I work with 55,000 Degrees. At 55K, our goal is to see, by the year 2020, 50% of Louisville's adult population with a degree. I want to show you a slide that shows you our progress toward that goal since the year 2008. There's a lot of numbers on here, so let me just make sure we're all on the same page. The middle line shows the percentage of all working age adults in Jefferson County who have an associate degree or higher, about 42%. The top line shows the percentage of white adults in Jefferson County with a degree, 47%. And the red line at the bottom shows the percentage of black adults in our community with a degree, 24%. Now I have to tell you that I absolutely cannot stand the lines on this chart. I can't for a lot of reasons. I can't stand what it says about our past and who we are today. But mostly I can't stand that it allows people to talk about achievement gaps, because that's not what this shows. What this shows is the result of an opportunity gap. Let me give you an example. In Kentucky, in 1904, the Day Law was passed. That made it illegal for black students to attend the same colleges and universities as white students until the year 1950. So why would we be surprised that a couple of generations later, our degree attainment looks like this? We shouldn't be. It was on purpose. And why would we be surprised that black families still struggle disproportionately in our community with poverty? 45% of black kids in Louisville struggle with poverty versus 14% of white kids. And we all know that if you don't know where your next meal is coming from, it makes it really, really hard to thrive academically. So what ends up happening is too many black kids internalize the idea that school is not a place for them. And if school is not a place for them, then college certainly isn't either. You add to that tuition prices at the college level that are going so high, so fast, and we put ourselves in a scenario where it's very likely that we're going to continue to see this, or that it might get worse. So that's why at 55K, we are taking part in a new partnership in the community called the Louisville Promise. At the core of the promise is the goal to build a scholarship program that ensures that every JCPS graduate can afford at least 2 years of community or technical college. But as I just touched on, the challenge is way bigger than just money alone. And so it's also a commitment amongst all the partners involved in the promise to work together in a new, smarter way so that every single kid in our community has the kind of support and opportunity that they need. That's the challenge before us in this community, is to provide the opportunity. The Louisville Promise at its core is an opportunity for all of us to end the discussion about attainment gaps and to end the existence of opportunity gaps. I believe firmly that through this work, our community can come together, and in our lifetimes, these lines finally will too. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is James Cayetos White, and I'm the head of school at Louisville Collegiate School. When I turned 18 years old, I left the state of Kentucky, born and raised in Hopkinsville, with the intent of potentially never coming back. But here I am. I'm back. And I'm back actually today with a challenge to you. I'm an educator. I have been from the moment I went to college to the moment that I stepped out. I've been an educator. I believe in the value. I believe in the hope that education brings. But more importantly, I am a product of what a great education can do. But let me tell you something that I've learned since being back here in Louisville about this community, about what I see as an outsider. Because, you know, if you haven't been in Louisville for 20 years, you are an outsider here. But as an outsider, one of the things that I've been able to see and understand here is that Louisville is a city right now that loves being just in front of the curve. Just in front. Not too far out in front where you might take some risk to get some reward, but just far enough to say, we're not doing nothing. We're not doing nothing. And see, that for an educator is a problem. Because if you're a student in my class and you are just doing enough, that is not enough. And so my challenge is about ownership of what it means to do enough. I am the first African-American head of school. And I say first because there should be more after me. I should not be the last. But let's be clear here that every step we take, there are obstacles, there are challenges that we must face head on. We cannot pretend that they don't exist. We cannot pretend that if we keep the status quo and we move 1 inch at a time, that we will get to where we want. We want 50,000 degrees. What are we going to do to get 50,000 degrees? We want accountability at the government level. What is our responsibility to own that process? Because, see, I had a mentor that talked to me about the difference between owning something and just being a part of it. Because when I walk in your house and I don't own that house, I'm a guest. I ask you, where is your bathroom? May I use it? What's in your refrigerator? Can I get a drink of water? But when I own it, I walk in that house or that school or this city and I say, it's mine. I deserve everything that is in here. I have access, unlimited access to everything that is here. And at the end of the day, I'm proud because it is mine. If we want to see change in the city of Louisville, then what are we going to do to own our part? This is not about owning every part, because for me, my little part sits in Cherokee Triangle right now. But let me tell you, we have more African-American students in that school right now than we ever have in the history of that school. We give out more financial aid in terms of getting kids to our school than any other school in this city. So when I tell you that I'm doing my part and I'm trying to own my part, my challenge to you is, what can you own about this problem? Because let me explain to you that without ownership, we will pass the buck until it's too late. And that's what we are good at, staying just far enough out in front to say we're doing something when we're really not doing anything. So as I leave you today, my challenge is, find out what space you are in, find out how you own that space, and then find out that with that ownership, what can you do to make Louisville the city that we all want it to be. Thank you.
Yes! Moga brothers and sisters, I'm honored to follow my dear brother, Dr. James Calleros White. I just learned how to pronounce that this morning. And here's a plug in my 5 minutes. Catch the Ricky Jones Show with 12 Mr. FTC. We are interviewing Dr. James Calleros White Sunday morning at 10. He has a magnificent story. He didn't have time to tell you. This man was born to a mother, 15 years old, did not know his father, was in a house that had an outhouse and ended up being a Harvard grad, and then came home to Louisville to do the fabulous work he's doing. He's the main reason my daughter is at Louisville Collegiate now, because I ain't got the money to send her, so they give us all of that. Also, I'm happy to follow my dear brother Mark Murphy. Be on the lookout for our new book coming out at some point called Colin, Confederates, and Con Artists, Essays on American Politics, Passions, and Possibilities. So we're trying to do our little piece. So I'm going to go quick so they don't do the Apollo thing on me and pull the cane out on me. My brief talk is about higher ed, and it's great because we have so many people here that could talk for 30, 45 minutes on their own. My grandmother, and like Brother James, my mother was 15 when I was born, raised by my grandmother, who was born in 1933 in rural Georgia, never had a chance to go to school, died in 2009, barely literate. And she told me, I don't know what you can do with an education, but I know what you can't do without one. That's a huge thing. We are still in a place where a lot of people in Kentucky do not know what you can do with an education. Unfortunately, across lines of race, Kentucky ranks number 45 in the country, 45th in the country. For those of you who do not know, there are only 50 states. It ranks 45th in the country in percentage of people 25 years or older who have high school diplomas. It ranks 47th in the country for people 25 years or older who do not have a bachelor's degree. 47th in the country is Kentucky, only ranking behind Mississippi, Arkansas, and West Virginia. It is not great company to be in. Meanwhile, the leadership of the state is once again cutting funding to higher education by 4.5% this cycle, and targeting cutting it even more during the next budgetary cycle. So that tells you that the state of Kentucky is not actually serious about higher education, maybe not very serious about education at all. But we have a terrible bifurcation that is taking place here. If that's what's going on in Kentucky overall, you can only imagine how African Americans in the Commonwealth are impacted. We are still at a time when W.E.B. Du Bois talked about the talented 10th at the turn of the 20th century. He was talking about the 10% of African Americans who had college degrees. We still have not doubled that. Only about 21% of Black women get college degrees. Only about 17 to 18% of Black men do. It is worse here in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And I'm saying we have to take that on. And we also have to have very serious conversations about the type of education our children are getting. I certainly respect the move for trade schools, junior colleges, technical schools, all of that. But while many elites are talking about our children going to trade schools and technical schools, their children are going to Ivy League schools. That is something we must engage. So if we are going to be serious about moving forward, because no great city is great without a thriving university. So if the University of Louisville is damaged, then the city of Louisville is damaged and the state of Kentucky is damaged. So like the brother said, let's make Mulga great. Let's make U of L great again and Kentucky great for the first time. We can do it together. Thank you.
Okay, can y'all hear me? Great. So hello, everyone. I'm Asia Barber. I work at the Center for Health Equity. I work for Lennon Pryor's wife, who is right now delivering a baby. So y'all send her all of the good energy, because we had to fight her so that she wasn't here today. So thank y'all so much for allowing me to come in. I'm going to talk about, let's see which way we go. I'm going to talk about our health equity report really quickly that was released in November, just a few months ago. So this is our life expectancy map. Our life expectancy maps are always the most famous piece of our health equity reports. This is our third one. I just want to take a second here, take a moment, and let's look at what this map is telling us, okay? So if you can't see, the darker green we go, the longer people are living. Y'all have heard that a few times. This map is showing you that data, okay? So as we look at those lighter yellow pieces, I'm just going to go on to our next map, which shows the demographics of where people are living in Louisville. Do we see some similarities, some patterns there? I'll go back and forth a couple times. I want to, at this time, just take a quick moment of silence, because I think it's really important that we recognize data is numbers, but there are people behind this data, right? There are people that we need to honor right now who have lost their lives before they were ready. So let's just take a moment and honor the mamas and the daddies and the children, the brothers, the sisters, the aunts. Just take a moment. Okay, so going back to this life expectancy map, and this is an average. So we're talking about a 12.6-year life difference depending on where you live and who you are, but that's an average. If we're breaking down that data by who you are, right, so your race and your gender, we see even starker differences. For Black men in Louisville, we see between a 2.5 and a 16.75 life difference, depending on who you're comparing them to. For Black women, we see a 2 to 12.72 life difference. So this is important, and I want to talk really quickly about why. When we talk about life expectancy, diabetes, cancer, any of those things, we're talking about health outcomes. For us, that's the leaves of the tree. That's an outcome. That's not the beginning of the problem. So we want to zero in on what we call the roots of our tree, okay? So those are root causes. So things that you've heard people talking about today, things that the Urban League attacks and intervenes in so beautifully, those are things like transportation and access to housing, our food access. What's our experience with the criminal justice system looking like, right? So our experiences with those root causes, that shapes our health outcomes, but even more so because of the history and the context of this country. Our experience with root causes are shaped by systems of power. For us, in our metaphor here, that's the soil. So our trees are planted in racism in this country. They're planted in sexism, homophobia, ableism, right? We can go down the list of all of the ways that we know those systems of power shape those root causes for us. They pattern those root causes. And I just want to say here really quickly that we all experience these root causes. We all experience housing. We all experience food to some degree, but how we experience that in our communities is shaped by systems of power. So I just want to just take a second and let everyone know that we have all of the resources right now in this community to make the changes that we want to see. We can live in an equitable world. And we don't even know what that equitable world looks like for us yet, because we haven't done it. There's so many opportunities, there's so many new fields that would be created Because in order for us to have an equitable world, we all have to do it. We all have to get in where we fit in, which is something I said this morning. And it requires all of us. So before I go, I just want to read some words from Dr. Kelly Pryor from her article, just to name her here in this space. We cannot have a flourishing Louisville without a thriving Black Louisville. A Louisville where Black women and girls are fully cared for and accepted in their own right, not simply in relation to their male or white counterparts. Where the health of Black men and boys are promoted through a lens of wellness instead of a constant state of crisis. In a city where our LGBTQ population across race and class are recognized as full and equal participants in society. I just want to say again, we can do this. We have the resources to do it right now. Let's do it.
That was so well orchestrated that I would follow Asia's tree in the metaphor there, because that's what I'm going to talk about, is that whole tree. And I'll just have to tell you, I am really depressed by what I'm doing for you today, because everybody else had a very positive message. What I'm doing is bringing the very negative message. Let's take a look at these numbers together. And just to give you a feel for what I compared with for East Louisville. East Louisville was the area that Asia had marked out in dark and light green. The West Louisville figures come from all of the sources that are listed at the bottom of the article that we wrote. But let's just jump right into this. Alcohol and drug-related causes. If you're in West Louisville, you have 7 times the likelihood of dying from alcohol and drug-related causes. That's a 700% increase if you're a used car salesman. They like to talk in percentages. Diabetes, look at this. You're up at 6 times the normal rate. And when I look at that number, because diabetes is my specialty, I'm in the School of Public Health. Diabetes is my specialty, and one of the things that I know is there is an underlying economic stratum to this. Do you know that your new secretary of the HHS was single-handedly responsible for increasing the price of a vial of insulin, which you may need 1 per day if you're seriously advanced in the disease? 1 vial of insulin 12 years ago was $21. Does anyone have any idea what it costs today? $255. How much do you think that might contribute to these differentials here? Heart disease. You're looking at almost 3 times the risk of dying from heart disease if you live in West Louisville versus East Louisville. Cancer, look at that, almost 3 times the rate. HIV, 60 times the rate. Blow that into a used car salesman's, and I'm not insulting used car salesmen, but blow that into the kind of figure that they'd give you if they were trying to tell you about the price. That is a 60,000% increase. Let's look at cancer. Cancer's the same thing. You're looking at almost a 3 times rate. Stroke, almost a 4 times rate. Homicide, and this one will blow you away. If you live in West Louisville, the odds that you're going to die from a homicide rather than any other cause is 136 times the rate of someone who lives in East Louisville. And these numbers, when Dean Blakely asked me to do this with him, he asked me to go and research this, and I started coming up with these numbers, and I couldn't believe them. So I had 2 graduate students working with me go back and double-check, fact-check me, because I don't want to be like the president of some large country right now. Suicide, evenly a quadrupling. And if you look at the literature, I'm not a suicide specialist, but I look at the literature every once in a while. And what this means is that these people here probably have great hopelessness. That's what's driving the suicide rate. Accidents, you're looking at almost a tripling, and infant mortality, a doubling. This is a key indicator of where the nation is. You know, we rank somewhere around 27th in the world for infant mortality, but we're supposed to be the richest nation on earth. Is there something wrong with that? Okay, gets even worse. No health insurance, more than 25%. East Louisville, less than 10%. Percent of children in poverty, I heard you guys talking about it. 95%, if you use the new thresholds. 95% of children in West Louisville live in poverty. High school graduation rate, less than 25%. In the East, 95%. High school graduation is probably something that's leading to this. So you see that unemployment is greater than 25%, while in East Louisville, it's less than 5%. And I heard someone talking earlier about transportation. All of these things come to bear when you look at the numbers. Lack reliable transportation, more than 50%. That is one of the key indicators as to whether or not you're going to have gainful employment for a long period of time. That is the number one predictor if you're doing an analysis. Percent of income spent on housing, 45% versus 25%. And I'm sure that most of you have been through the pain of getting a mortgage. You know the cutoff here. The absolute cutoff for percent of income spent on housing for you to get a mortgage is 35%. If you're above 35%, forget it. You're not getting a mortgage. Am I over? Okay, please read the report. The numbers are fact-checked.
Afternoon, everyone. In 2007, Community Farm Alliance issued a report identifying the so-called food deserts of Louisville, much of which were in West Louisville and East Downtown. The authors connected the health and equity experienced by Black Louisvillians to fresh food and quality, including shorter lifespans and higher rates of type 2 diabetes and high blood pressure. Not content to be classified strictly as a community with a deficit, leaders came together to formulate solutions. Unfortunately, the solutions failed to deliver results, including farmers markets, mobile markets, resellers for local farmers, and the Health in a Harry Corner Store initiative, First Choice Market. Each of these initiatives came with their own set of challenges, but for the most part, economics played a key role. Retail prices for fresh food compared to the price of processed and fast food was simply too expensive. In 2009, with the resilience the Kentuckianers are known for, we picked ourselves up, dusted off our walking shoes, and we hit the ground organizing around more sustainable solutions. Out of this backdrop in June of 2009, New Roots was born and has continued to unite communities to spread food justice. Our tagline, created by Black Louisville, states, "Fresh food is a basic human right." We create a new model utilizing grassroots community organizing for fresh food access that is equitable and just. Fresh Stop markets rely on families pooling their resources on an income-based sliding scale ahead of the markets, thereby guaranteeing orders and fair wages to farmers. Black churches provide most of our leadership and host sites. Fast forward to 2018, and we are happy to report that hundreds of volunteer leaders and shareholders continue to drive New Roots and the Fresh Stop markets with a passion that surprises outside of this movement. This past year, we connected 1,800 families. 70% of those were facing limited resources. We also had 50 Kentuckiana farmers who provided produce and purchase 7,000 shares of local, organic, affordable seasonal produce at our 14 markets. And this season, we're growing to 18 markets. Have we reached every family who struggles with fresh food insecurity? Is fresh food really a basic human right in Black Louisville and beyond? No. Our resources are limited, but we are busy fundraising to grow this movement. We have demonstrated that cooperative economics to combat fresh food insecurity in Black Louisville works today, just as it worked in years past when our ancestors pooled their resources to start their own benevolent societies. We've shown that Black Louisville does not want to eat their vegetable. It's just not accurate. We would love for all of Black Louisville to join us in building this movement, and thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Yvette Gentry, and I'm on Metro United Way today. And it's on me. I had to pivot away from my presentation because I had to wait on one picture, and I didn't get it in on time. But I believe everything happens the way it's supposed to happen. Shame on me for knowing what I know and allowing so many people for the past few years to spend so much time trying to convince me that I know different, that I felt like I needed pictures because my voice is so fatigued. I know when I was deputy police chief in 2011, I had a $143 million budget and nobody asked me 2 questions as to why I needed it. I know in 2017, when I went before Metro Council to ask for $143,000 damn dollars, I got 0. I know that Narcan is $42 a dose, and we will give you 3 doses a day if you need it, because 91% of our overdose victims are white. But when my Tyson's mother was addicted to drugs, there was nothing I could do for him. So sometimes when you're in them rooms and people are trying to tell you what you don't know, I had to always remind myself my why. Tyson Devon Gibbs Sr. is my why. And before you leave this room, please put his pictures up there. Please promise me that, okay? I want you to see the picture of Tyson Devon Gibbs Sr., the sweetest young man I ever met, and I have 4 of my own sons. He would follow me around when I was a cop. He wanted to be SWAT, but he didn't want to hurt people. When Southwick was torn down to make way for Park Duval, he got displaced, I got displaced. The next time I saw my Tyson, he had a bullet in him and he was bleeding from his mouth and his head and he was dead. He left behind a little girl and a little boy, babies, just toddlers. Taisha, his baby girl. I want you to see the picture later of her sitting on his lap just weeks before he was murdered. Well, Taisha was murdered too. In 2012, 15 years old. She lay dead in an alley after 2 men were arguing and she got hit by a straight bullet. And on wave 3 the next day, Tyson Devon Gibbs Jr., he said, I don't even know what to do. I've lost my father. I can't even sleep. I can't even eat. I can't even dream no more. No worries, Tyson Devon Gibbs Jr., because he took a bullet to his head July the 15th of 2017, and he's dead too. So if you have the power to allocate more. If you have the power to give more. If it's your job to appropriate more. If it's your job to approve more. If we can cure the opioid crisis, we can cure violence.
I'm very lucky to follow Miss Gentry because she illustrates a point that I hold very dear to my heart. And that point is, there is no health, there is no wealth, there is no peace, there is no growth without mental health. Everything we've talked about up to this point all centers around how we respond, how we feel, and how we progress within our daily lives, within our communities, and within our society. Without clarity of emotion, without clarity of thought, we can do nothing. The World Health Organization has clearly identified there is no health without mental health. It is the driver. What I tell people in my community is there is no health without emotional health, because how you feel is how you act. And those things come without you thinking, well, let me stop and not be angry. Let me stop and not be discouraged. Let me stop and not feel as if I were hopeless and there is no reason to move forward. People don't do that. They feel and they act. And that is why emotional health in every country but the United States is considered a public health issue. We should be treating emotional health the same way we treat diabetes, the same way we treat cardiovascular disease, because they are interrelated. The worse your emotional health is, the worse your physical health is going to be. We need to redefine exactly what we mean by good mental health. And what the new term is, good mental health is a state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. With all of the pressures that we have presented to you about the Black community, we burden them with many, many external factors, many social, political, racial factors, and ask them to be mentally and emotionally well, be productive within their communities. And surprisingly enough, most people do. What is the strength that has to be there in order for people to be able to do that? Are we using that strength to say, okay, here's how they do it? How can we help you for people who cannot at any given time? And regardless of what we think about poor mental health and good mental health, it is not an either or. Everybody in this room can travel from one to the other on any given day. And as a result of that, everything we do should look at what are the pressures on individuals? How does it affect their ability to feel and think and behave in ways that are positive to themselves, to their families, and to their communities? And we're not doing that. Most recently, we just found out the budget is cut for mental health. I say this is not the time to do it. And I ask you all to change your perspective on that and work as hard as you can to make it otherwise. Thank you.
I'm an African-American teen who goes to school in Louisville, Kentucky. I attend the high school with the lowest graduation rate out of all of Jefferson County schools. Every day, I face challenges of trying to prove that that rate doesn't define who I am. Class sizes are abnormally large, which makes it harder to pay attention and forces many of the teachers to stop caring. One of my teachers once said, "There's no point in pushing the kids to do their best or give more because they just don't care." I realized a long time ago that no matter how hard it got, I can't give up. Living in the west end of Louisville and going to school in the south, where both are very similar, with liquor stores on every corner and abandoned houses down every block. The experience is much different from the St. Matthews area or even the J-Town area of the city, where I traveled for middle school from the west end. The better schools in my area either aren't in my district or I don't have the accomplishments needed to get into those schools. Being an African American in Louisville, this is what it's like for me. This is what I've lived with for the last 17 years. Everybody's view isn't the same. Some have it better than others. However, that's not the case for me. Despite the hurdles, I am set to graduate in May and begin my first college semester in August. I refuse to give up. I refuse to give up and let the statistics define me. Thank you.
So, good afternoon, everybody. This is the state of Black Louisville, the young lady who just left, and our future of Black Louisville. So my name is Anthony Smith. I'm the executive director for Cities United. We're a national nonprofit that support a number of mayors across the country, really helping them think about how they create safe, healthy, and hopeful communities, really reducing the homicide rate of African-American men and boys. And you guys have heard a whole lot today around what that looks like and feels like. And if you look at the banners and you see, and you hear Sadiqa talks all the time, it's about jobs, justice, education, health, and housing. And we know it takes all of that to really create safe and healthy communities. One of the things I want to do today is really just challenge you all. I have had a chance to spend time in Frankfurt this Wednesday. They were debating a bill, House Bill 169. And the bill was focused on doing gain enhancements. And the folks who were really on the panel, the Justice Committee, were debating this whole bill, and they were looking at, and the bill would add extra time to your sentence if you were convicted and you were hanging around 3 or more. So they were trying to redefine what it is to be in a gang. And they were doing this in a place where they were not paying attention to the collateral consequences that come with that. If you think about the war on drugs, if you think about 3 strikes you out, the 94 crime bill, you think about stop and frisk, you think about stand your ground laws, who's impacted by those laws? The communities that we all are working for, we work with, and we care about are impacted, and they were ready to pass this bill, and it passed out of committee, but it's moved on to a place where hopefully it'll die. But I just really want us to be challenged ourselves, because there's a number, you heard Dr. Dawson talk about it too. When she talked about the code of conduct, John asked me to sit on that. And when you're debating those things in front of folks who have no real connection to the communities that are going to be impacted, we need to be in those rooms. We need to be in those rooms, and we need to say the things that we need to say. We need to stand strong in those rooms, because I think folks believe they're good intended, but they're doing harm to our communities in ways that they'll never know. You heard Colonel Gentry talk about the crack epidemic and the impact that has had on our communities, the way that they arrested folks, and the way that they just tore our communities up, and they're doing it so different when it comes to opioid. So my challenge really is show up at the school board meetings. We have Ms. Porter on the school board. Ms. Porter cannot be the only voice in there. You got to show up at Metro Council. We give Metro Council passes way too much in this community, and we never show up and we hold them accountable as well. We got to show up at the mayor's office. I used to work for the mayor, love the mayor, but you also got to hold the mayor accountable. But we've got to show up at the state level. There's a tons of policies that happen at the state level that impact us at the city level that we never show up for. We've got a handful of folks who look like us there, who have experienced the life that we have experienced, but the other folks have no clue. You heard Dr. Jones talk about Kentucky. Kentucky is a rural with a couple of urban communities in it. The folks who are representing the rural communities have no idea what we go through and what we deal with and how their laws and what they do impact our lives. So please show up, run for office if you're up for that. But if you're not up for that, be in those rooms, sit in those committees, testify against those bills, ask for the resources that we need, or actually demand the resources that we need for our kids. But one of the things that Sadiqa always said to me when I worked for her was policy, 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 and it matters. Please make sure we pay attention to the policies that folks are voting on and pushing forward that are going to have an impact on their life. So thank you all, and I appreciate your time.
My name is Armand Perry. I'm at the University of Louisville. And I'm here because fatherhood is the highest calling that a man can have here on earth. I'm also here because being a good dad and the things that qualifies one to be labeled or designated as a good dad have become harder and harder over time. We know that in days gone by, being a good dad meant that you brought home a paycheck and you put food on the table. None of that is going anywhere, but what we've done is we've added to that a component that requires nurturing and caregiving. We've done all of this in a context in which men typically aren't socialized to be nurturers and caregivers. On the financial provision side, what we've also done is we've required more and more of men against the backdrop of decreasing goods producing and manufacturing work. We've done that against a backdrop of decreasing, and we've heard from other people that speak to this, decreasing opportunities for higher education. When we speak specifically about Louisville, we also know that these issues around financial provision have become really, really troublesome or problematic. We know that that's certainly the case for Black men here in Louisville. We know that in Louisville, 16% of our Black men have a bachelor's degree. We know that unemployment is twice as much for Black men vis-a-vis their white counterparts. We also know that there are retreats from marriage. Here in Louisville, we know that if you're a Black child, only 38% of them live in the home with both their mother and father. And so to be clear, this does not mean that being a non-resident father is equal to being an uninvolved father, right? We know this. I'll say it again. Non-resident does not equal uninvolved. However, being non-resident does increase the risk for disengagement. That's a reality that we have to deal with. This is problematic because here in Louisville, we perpetuate a deficit narrative around fathers. Reverend Cosby might say that this is Louisville's hidden sin. I moved here from Alabama in 2008, and it wasn't very long before I realized Louisville perpetuated a deficit narrative around fatherhood. On or about Father's Day, every single year it seems, the Courier-Journal publishes a list Courier-Journal publishes a list of what it calls deadbeat dads. And it essentially reduces men to what they either do or don't have in their bank account. That's a hidden sin. I was also watching TV one night. It was around 10:30. Football game had gone off. I'm looking for something to watch. Turn on the public access station, and there's a TV show where men are paraded in front of a judge, and their private family matters are broadcast for the world to see. Kentuckiana deadbeats. To my way of thinking, these are some of Louisville's hidden sins. However, what I'm here to do today is not to perpetuate a deficit narrative, but I want to speak to some of our assets. I also want to leave you with some policy prescriptions, things that you can support in an attempt to help fathers take the active roles in their children's lives that we know that they can and want to do. So I can leave you with three things relatively quickly. First, I wanted you to support proposals to reduce the gender gap. We disproportionately burden moms by creating situation scenarios where moms choose to stay at home because economically it's feasible. Women ought to be paid the same that men make for doing the same type of work. If and when we do that, that creates, by definition, more opportunities for men to take active roles in nurturing and caregiving. Two, real quickly, because I'm almost out of time. We should also support proposals for paid parental leave. These are things that are being done in other parts of the world, and somehow, some way, their economies have not collapsed. The last thing is we need to support a culture of fathering. When you see men interacting with children, encourage it, support it, When you see opportunities to support agencies and organizations that serve families and fathers, make sure to support those. That's my time. Thank you.
My name is Josh Poe. I'm the researcher behind the Redlining Louisville project. I want to take a moment and thanks. I'm going to take my time back. I want to take a moment and just acknowledge, I was very fortunate when I was a student at U of L to sort of sit at the feet of Dr. Blaine Hudson. And Dr. Hudson really challenged me to take my work a lot further. And he challenged me to search for the redlining maps and document them. And I think that was in 2011. And unfortunately, I didn't find them until about 6 months after he passed. And I was thinking about Dr. Hudson today when I came down, and how we didn't come to this event today and have to walk past the Confederate monument, and how much work he put in to getting that monument torn down. So with that being said, we've done a great job today of really focusing on policy. My work's really based on design, and I like to give the example that design supersedes policy. So if we design a street for people to drive 65 miles per hour, but we apply a law for them to drive 45, people are still going to drive 65 miles per hour. And we're going to be applying the law retroactively and the policy retroactively, and we have to really fix the structural design issues. And the purpose of documenting redlining was really to make it a call to action, to really go back and use that as a tool that can be applied at the grassroots level to change the policies around housing. We live in a city today where if you invest $20,000 in a vacant house in the West End, if you buy it for $20,000 and you invest $60,000 in it, the house is going to be worth $30,000. We cannot operate in that system and expect to solve some of the housing issues that we have. So I put together some slides. I'm going to try to get through them quickly of the redlining maps, and I want to encourage everyone, when you look at the site, when you view the old documents, try to think about the connections to today and how the same patterns are still happening. For instance, the consultants who took part in documenting the redlining, who made the documents, were operating in private, and developed a completely classified system with no public input. So the purpose of redlining was to graphically reflect the desirability of neighborhoods. So we're talking about, when we talk about desirability, we're talking about what's worth having, right? And the factors that went into that was the social status of the population and the restrictions set up to protect neighborhoods. The price level of homes was not the guiding factor. So we're not talking about a free market system. What we learn in economics classes where people make rational decisions based on freedom of choice. That didn't happen in this case. Some of the descriptions for the neighborhoods, Chickasaw was close to the Negro Park, and I'm quoting. You can see that integration was seen as a deterrent to property values within the documents, because if you're going to try to create a successful capitalist system, you do not want poor white people and poor black people living together in the same neighborhood. So that was considered a detriment. Park Hill and Algonquin, the Negro population in the northern part, white population in the south, they said balance bad. They described Russell and Portland as having a mixture of the population and no restrictions. Restrictions meaning deed restrictions. I'm going to get into that in a minute. The highest ranked neighborhood in these documents from 1938 was the area around Indian Hills, Mockingbird Valley. They said this is the best place to live in Louisville, not because it had the best homes, not because it was it was really where people wanted to live at that time, but because it had the highest restrictions. So what they were saying was that you could buy a home in Indian Hills, Mockingbird Valley, and you would never have to worry about living in the same neighborhood as a black person. Your kids would not have to worry about that, and that's why it received the highest ranking. So if we think about people's ability to create wealth generation in this country was based on the exclusion of blacks. So someone born into a home in Mockingbird Valley, Indian Hills in 1938, their ability to create wealth, their property values exponentially increased as a result of these maps. Some other factors that went into, I'll just get through these, and then here it talks about the restrictions. That was the highest ranked area. If we compare that to some areas downtown, for instance, the Russell area, which is now Beecher Terrace, They listed some favorable influences being close to the principal business district. Now, these areas were devalued. Try to think about what's happening in Russell today. Try to think about why Russell suddenly has become a valuable piece of real estate. See, I'm a city planner, and we know city planners know how to fix neighborhoods. We know how to go, and we do it all over the country all the time, but we don't do it for the people that live in the neighborhood. The poor people that live in the neighborhood have to leave the neighborhood, and then we can go in, fix the streets, fix the sidewalk, fix the house. So, clarifying remarks, and they said this is about the worst area of the city. Now, I feel like we've done a good job of documenting what happened, and we've done a good job of documenting the problem. But we have to look at what are we going to do now. These maps were created by the power structure, and they were held by the power structure. My hope in making them public was that they would be used by local activists at the grassroots level to hold that power structure accountable for some process of reconciliation, economic justice, or reparations in some form. And we don't know exactly what that looks like. I've been working with Bill Houston, and in 2000, thank you guys. Please view the map. How about you come? So I've been working with Bill Houston on, we've been looking at crowd investing. In May of 2016, a law passed saying that equity crowdfunding or crowd investing could become legal. Bill Houston likes to say that that is the most important piece of legislation for African Americans since the Emancipation Proclamation. What that means is that black communities no longer have to go to banks. They no longer have to go to the nonprofit industrial complex. They no longer have to look for grants to invest in their communities. They can invest in their communities for themselves and achieve equity, the equity that they invest. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me now? Drive anywhere west of 9th Street, and what do you run into? 9 neighborhoods that makes up the majority of African American population right here in the state of Kentucky. Each of those 9 neighborhoods, you see row after row, block after block of vacant and abandoned properties. Coupling with what Josh just mentioned, this has been a systemic movement here in this city. Rebound Inc. is a housing development corporation that was created by the Louisville Urban League back in 1993. For the last 7 years, we've made it our mission to not only go into these 9 neighborhoods, but to begin to acquire all the vacant and abandoned properties that we can and quickly make them available for homeownership. And I make no bones about it. My goal has been to increase the minority homeownership rate, particularly in this neighborhood. Right now, Rebound and the Urban League is headquartered in the Russell neighborhood. The Russell neighborhood is probably going to be the hottest neighborhood here in this city based upon the things that are taking place right now. If we don't take a stand right now, we're going to see African Americans not being able to afford to stay and live in the neighborhoods that they grew up in and that they deserve to be in. So who is the focus on? My generation, and I'm a baby boomer, I'm not the focus. If you look at the demographics of this city and across this country, our millennials are going to be the next group to carry this city forward and to maintain the West Louisville neighborhoods that we all grew up and loved and nurtured our families in. So my focus is going to be, going forward, is how do we put our arms around the millennials and help them to achieve homeownership opportunities and housing opportunities, primarily in West Louisville. That being said, it's not going to be easy. It's going to take the work of everybody in this room, not only from the nonprofit sector, the business sector, but also government. More investment has to take place in West Louisville. The mayor has been touted that there is about $800 million worth of investment right now going into West Louisville. How much of that actual investment is on the infrastructure and the housing opportunities that we need to create to bring these neighborhoods back to where they used to be? I would say much more needs to be done. And with your help, we can get that done. Millennials are a very unique group. I've never seen a group of individuals like them. Everything is done electronically. So we have to begin to address them in a new way. And the single problem that most millennials have right now is debt to be enabled. And that debt is student debt. Thank you.
There we go. As a result of the foreclosure crisis from the last decade, Black and Hispanic households in the United States lost 71% of their net worth. Now, you have just heard about policies that herded people into small geographic areas, excluded people from living where they might want to, so you know that outcomes are not accidental. And the same is true for wealth building. Predatory lending practices that were allowed to flourish and that led to the foreclosure crisis targeted Black households and neighborhoods. Oops, do I go this way? This chart shows home ownership and rental rates in the United States, in Kentucky, and on the far right in Louisville. 70% of white households in Louisville own a home compared to 37% of Black households in Louisville. There were intentional policies and programs to strip wealth from Black households, and we need intentional policies and programs to increase Black homeownership. Now, Metropolitan Housing Coalition, we focus on fair housing and affordable housing, and I'm going to refer to systems that you are going to want to solve for a whole lot of reasons, but I'm focusing on housing. And we recognize that one barrier we can overcome if we recognize, I keep doing that, its existence. This is a population chart for all of Louisville. And this is the population chart for African American Louisville. And what you see is Black men ages 25 to 34 have been removed from our community. Other professionals have talked about what causes this removal and other impacts of the removal, and I keep calling it removal because that is what has happened. We have simply taken people out of our community. But I'm keeping my focus on housing, although it is simply more proof that all systems are entwined. Why is the loss of Black men ages 25 to 34 important to Black home ownership rates? Well, it's a little intuitive, but the chart I showed before also shows that 42% of female-headed households own a home in Louisville compared to 83% of two-adult households. So removal of men at the time that households are most likely to enter into ownership is a barrier to increasing Black home ownership rates. There are other barriers, but I'm just going to focus on this one. And policies that can be useful. And here is one recommendation. Mortgage criteria need to combine with local programs to make home ownership possible for single wage earners. You can read the essay to see other suggested solutions. And it's an investment in stability to do this. For instance, the Section 8 voucher program has allowed over 200 households to use what was supposed to be rent assistance as mortgage assistance. And there are excellent outcomes for those households. So assisting single income households into home ownership is an investment in our community. There are other systems that create this disparity, such as criminal justice and wage inequality, but we need to change those systems. But we cannot wait for the completion of the changes of those systems before we start the growth of Black wealth through sensible home ownership. I hope you read the essay.
Good afternoon. I'm going to start off by saying, and I think we've said it before, but I'm going to make it very clear, the system is not broken. It is doing exactly what it is designed to do. And when we talk about a system not being broken, I laugh because we hear people talking about coming to take over things called a district. You can't take over what you've already created. You created a system in such a situation where what you're taking over is what you created. So I don't know how you're going to come take over something where the system is set up for students of color to be marginalized. The system is set up for students of color to be over-suspended. The system is set up for gifted and talented to have more classes offered on the other side of 9th Street than on this side of 9th Street. So you can take over what you already created, but you already created it. So I don't understand why we are so upset. One of the things, and I will get very much into it, I have Principal Robert Gunn here, and I'm going to ask him to stand up. He didn't know I was doing this. Principal Robert Gunn is the principal of the Du Bois Academy of Louisville, Kentucky. As the principal of the Du Bois Academy of Louisville, Kentucky, half of Louisville lost their mind. And when I say that work, I say that not just to white Louisville, I say it to Black Louisville too. Because I don't know why we were so upset when we start talking about excellence for Black boys. Because we weren't upset when we talk about Minor Daniels. We're not upset when we talk about being out of the diversity guidelines. But when we say this school will be for boys of excellence, this school will be for boys so they can learn who they are. This school will teach them that slavery is not where we started on the world stage. But that became a problem. We were going back to segregation. That's damn dumb. The system is already created. The system that so many people are talking about taking over was already created to segregate us. All you got to do is walk past 9th Street. So when we start talking about the code of conduct and removing disruptive behavior, the system again lost their minds. Why would a system lose their minds for disruptive behavior, Pastor Williams? Because the disruptive behavior was so subjective that a Black boy that cussed you out would get suspended for 5 days when the white boy cussed you out might get a lollipop. So why are we worried about such things? So I stand here to first say that the Du Bois Academy is about excellence. And unapologetically, the district should get behind that, and the city should get behind such things as excellence. I say the mere fact that you can go to gifted and talented classes on the other side of in Ballard High School, and there's 27 offered, and Shawnee offers 4. We've made a long statement that the students on that side of town aren't gifted unless we send them to the other side of town. Those are statements that and let's be very clear, I'm not talking about just the board. I'm talking about statements that we've been allowed to have as a system and as a city. So we need to get in front of that. I do not have a lot of time because I don't really like doing a whole lot of talking anymore. I am done with collaborations. I am over collaborations. It's about collaboration. So I end with this. I am very honored to work for a man that is in the room, Acting Superintendent Marty Polio, potentially might be the superintendent of the entire district. But Black Louisville, next time around, we better have a Black finalist to apply for superintendent. And if we do not, you send the whole damn slate back. We better have a black finalist next time around. Thank you.
That the Urban League does not endorse, no, I'm just joking. What a day. What a day. What a day. A reporter asked earlier if we would do this annually. I said, I'm not sure. I don't know. It was a lot to take on. We didn't really plan it. It wasn't in the budget. I'm not sure. The answer is yes. 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 This is the first. If you are in the room and you are white and you are angry, join the club. That is the point. It must be uncomfortable. And we want you to understand what it feels like. And we are talking about people who have, lots of us, wonderful jobs. You saw a lot of different people up here, different socioeconomic statuses. But the point is to say that even with the 2-car garages in the central air, we are tired. It is not enough. We are tired of Band-Aid programs. In 2017 and 18, we are still fighting about Confederate monuments being removed in this city. Blaine Hudson worked hard to have that Confederate monument removed. Dr. Ricky Jones had to come behind him to ultimately get it done. Years and years later, we started fighting over that when I was in college in that's right. Do you understand? We are tired. So if you are frustrated today, if you feel uncomfortable, if you wonder, why did I come? I don't know. Listen. This is what we are living with every day. This is the reality of being black, not in America, but in Louisville. And I want everybody to understand that, regardless of race. This is not easy. Sometimes people say to me, you seem so angry. I am suffering from ongoing traumatic stress disorder. I am a soldier that never gets to go home from the war. My phone rings constantly. My heart is constantly broken. This is real. This is life. This is not a game. And I wanted you to see other people because I think I have been blessed in these 2.5 years that I've had this job. I have been on the news week after week, day after day, so many accolades, person of the year, so many blessings. But let me tell you something. It's not just me. Because I know people get tired, like, gosh, there she is again, she is. I will use every microphone to highlight the struggle of the people that I serve. It is my job. It is my duty. It is, I believe, what God created me for. I think that I have found my thing. Find your thing. So let me say some things to you all. First of all, we are going to have another event just like this one for all of the speakers who can be there. We're going to do it at the Urban League. We're going to do it in community. We wanted to do this first one here because we wanted to, because we don't have to stay west of 9th Street. We get to travel about freely during daylight and nighttime. So that's why we're here. We received some criticism even from our own community for having this event here today. I'll take that on, because I think it was important for us to be here, to broaden even our own horizons, because sometimes we can only dream but so big. If my staff, anybody working for the Louisville Urban League is in this room, please do stand. Again, please stand. And look, I see some folks standing up that we ain't hardly paying, but they come in every day. Thank you, especially, God bless you, thank you so much. Ashley Finley is the editor of the book, and she has been amazing. Ashley, stand up. Come here. Stand up here. Stand right there. I want you to see this. Black girls read, write, and edit. I didn't know we edit. Go on, girl. We could not have done this without her. And again, I want to have all of the writers, all of the essayists. If you are still in the room, some had to leave. And that was crazy because look, we got a DJ after. As soon as I finish talking, we get ready to party. If y'all want to leave, y'all leave. But Stephen Riley said to me, look, you can't struggle all day, all the time. I said, I know that's right, Brother Riley. So come on. All essayists, please stand. If you are already standing, wave your hands, please. Now, and to those of you who have those comfortable lives, who could really just stay at home and not subject yourself to what we are going through or talking about, that could just close the door and attempt to ignore the pain and the suffering and years of grief. I want to thank you. I want to thank you for being here. And I'm going to challenge you in the same way that I challenged the mayor when I worked for him. I would say to him, don't assume that everybody has a heart that you have. Don't assume that everybody would take the time to be here today. Don't assume that everybody would take this information and process it in the same way. Don't assume that. You are not surrounded by your peers. We have got to change this world together. And you can't be naive about your friends and your family. These systems did not create themselves. Somebody did that. Jefferson County Public School System is going through a lot of challenges. And I thought it was interesting that we got another black woman in charge. Look, now Diane's the chair again, and everything is a mess. I'm just saying, she's going to need our support every little step of the way. And so when John Marshall said, and somebody else did, we have got to go to those board meetings. And you all have to be ambassadors for our communities. And so I am going to end with the essay, which is first in the book, but will be last today. And I'm going to recite it verbatim because I spent a lot of time on it and I don't want to change a word. Oh, before that, there are books for sale here. If you would like them, they're out there. You can also next week get them online. Imagine sitting down to a game of Monopoly. Everyone else at the table has been playing for 400 years. Everyone but you. Still, you join the game. Of course, because you're late, by the time you start, some players have acquired boatloads of money. Others have lost as much. But they all have had 400 years of experience learning the game, creating the rules, adjusting for flaws. These are all things that a new player would have to catch up on. Now suppose only half the players want you in the game. The remainder resent your presence, your delay in participating, and constantly remind you of how great the game was before you got in. Where does the new player get the resources to join the game? Do you begin with the same amount of money as players who started 400 years ago? If so, how do you ever really exert any influence over the board? After all, most of the land is owned by others. Boardwalk is gone, and many players own hotels all around the board. Every place you land, you must pay some sort of tax. Each time you make it around the board, you pay $200, just like every other player passing go. The challenge is that every payment comes close to bankrupting you. You've had no access to resources available to other players because the rules were set before you ever even got in. It gets to the point where landing on go to jail is the only safe space from the tax of life. Your presence is felt, because the time you take to learn the rules and roll the dice slows the game. You are constantly reminded that you can't be a serious player because there's no way you could ever really win. The late player, the Black player, is not playing Monopoly. The Black player is playing survival. A few of us, we get lucky and thrive, but many, get caught in a system that we are ill prepared to enter and within which our presence is very much resented. It is incumbent upon us to remind ourselves and others that we are the only immigrants in this country brought in against our will and held entirely for the benefit of others. We are the descendants of slaves forced to immigrate into a country in which we are not responsible for our presence and have had very little to no say over our condition. Yet, we achieve. We achieve in ways that were never imagined or intended, and quite often against all odds and in circumstances that would have broken a less resilient people. Our lack of wealth is not indicative of a lack of creativity, ideas, or solutions, or even effort. Power began to be acquired before the rules even allowed a seat at the table or a chance to play the game, and now it's 400 years old. 250 years of slavery, 90 years of Jim Crow, 60 years of discriminatory housing policies, countless examples of our presence being unwanted and our lives unvalued, and we are still here. The Make America Great Again slogan begs the question, under what conditions do some have to live for America to be great? And great for whom? As we witness attacks on the gains that have been made, we also feel the hope of arriving at a crossroads and knowing that we have this moment to create new alliances and collaborations, to push toward a world that reflects justice and equity rather than one that sets America back again. We don't have the resources to significantly invest in our own communities. We can't self-fund large-scale capital projects. That's what Josh Poe just said. We don't have it. We can't do it. We've been redlined out of that. We can't even control the cost of necessities in the communities in which we live. Our investment needs require charity, or we would argue, justice. We need intentional investment in the dreams of Black Americans and capital investment with Black ownership on the other side of that deal. White Americans have had the ability and resources to take risk, finding great success and at times great failure. Yet society seems to attribute Black failure to ignorance or incompetence. We get one shot by one star who we better pray does not choke. And should our star hit his shot, hit her shot, in my case, and the celebration ensue, we better then pray that they stay loyal to the movement, even when the other team begins to recruit. Let me tell you, the pressure of being Black in America, being Black in Louisville, is aspiration crushing. If America is ever to be great, she must tell the truth of the history of Black people in this country. She must constantly tell the truth that we did not arrive on this planet as slaves. She must change the misleading narrative playing about who and what Black people are and how she has benefited from keeping us in our place. There can be no peace without justice and no justice without truth. In fact, Louisville must tell the truth of its history and begin to deal with the real effects of discrimination, redlining, bias, and dog whistles. We hear them too. The challenges in our city are the same as those present for Black people in every city in this country. Access to capital is limited. And when it comes, it is directive and sparse. We are invited to the table as observers, but not empowered, not even empowered to disagree or set our own course. We are free to speak our minds, but only to the extent that we understand our message could result in frustration on the part of those with the resources we desperately need. Sometimes other Blacks view those making it into higher levels of the game as sellouts. Sadly, sometimes they are. However, many of us remain true in every room we enter, and we are fighting for change. Indeed, it is sometimes our presence that keeps us all from being sold downriver again. When you see us and we cry, when you see us and we seem angry, it is because what you have heard today is the reality of what it is to be us in this country, in this city. 2-car, 3-car garage, central air, and still not free. Still concerned about if I say too much, will they cut off my funding? But not really. Because for real, for me, for the Louisville Urban League, for every presenter that was here today, this report was our effort to, at a minimum, say to Louisville, say to anybody, at a minimum, we own our voices, whatever the cost. Thank you.
Drinks, outside, books, outside. Turn it up, Rob. Let's roll. All day.